some nations. We have been not. We shall be all. We want no condescending saviors to rule us from the judgment hall.
A wandering band of members of a so-called religious cult with a leader they call Jesus has had 3 of its followers arrested in the investigation of the murder of Sharon Tate and 6 others. Those arrested are 2 women and 1 man, and the Los Angeles police said they would ask murder indictments against several others. 5 women are being held as material witnesses.
From your words, as Mr. Emmons quotes them in this book, it's clear that you were guilty of murder, and yet he says in all his conversations with you, he never heard you express remorse. Have you never felt it?
Remorse for what? You people have done everything in the world to me. Doesn't that give me equal right? I can do anything I want to you people at any time I want to, because that's what you've done to me. If you spit in my face and smack me in the mouth and throw me in solitary confinement for nothing, what do you think's going to happen when I get out of here?
Time keeps on flying. Think you're loving, baby, and all you're doing is crying. Can you feel? Are those feelings real? Look at your game, girl. Look at your game, girl. What
I don't need to feel guilty. I haven't done anything I'm ashamed of. Maybe I haven't done enough. I might be ashamed of that, for not doing enough, for not giving enough, for not being more perceptive, for not being aware enough, for not understanding, for being stupid. Maybe I should have killed 400 or 500 people, then I would have felt better.
In the parlance of the times, gullible innocence can often go hand in hand with naivete. And yet, under certain circumstances, this can be a very dangerous combination. This is never more apparent when a twisted predator recognizes such qualities in an individual, or worse yet, a group, and manipulates the situation for their own horrific gains. Tonight I welcome my fellow YouTuber and true crime chronicler to the Haunted Broadcast as we delve deep into the auspices of free love, flower power, and cold-blooded murder.
Our journey into one of the most shocking crimes in American history begins with this man, one Charles Mill Maddox, born November 12, 1934, in the down-and-out slums of Cincinnati, Ohio. His mother, Catherine Cavender, a 16-year-old runaway and drifter, was hardly up to the task of raising a child. Her son's father, a conman who claimed to be an army colonel, hightailed it out of town as soon as he learned that Cavender was pregnant. It is believed that Manson never indeed met his real father. Shortly before her son was born, Cavender married a local labourer named William Manson, and when her baby was born, William was listed as Charlie's biological father, and the boy took the name of his stepfather, carrying the new moniker of Charles Mills Manson, the name he would carry for the rest of his turbulent life. In his first few years, Manson would suffer incredible abuse from his mother and stepfather through the course of their extremely dysfunctional marriage. The boy would often be left alone with a variety of so-called babysitters, or even left to his own devices, as his mother would embark on drunken binges throughout the downtown districts of Cincinnati. There are even several accounts of the young woman trying to sell a young Manson for a pitcher of beer. After his mother and several accomplices were sent to prison for grand theft, Manson was sent to live with relatives in West Virginia. It was here that the future cult leader began his downward spiral into criminal activity. For the next 25 years, Manson would circulate in a revolving door of time spent in and out of prison. The young man would be convicted on a plethora of charges, ranging from theft, fraud, and assault.
We fast forward to early March of 1967, and on latter parole, Manson makes his way to the fabled Haight-Ashbury district of downtown San Francisco. The summer of love had dawned, and with it came the rise of freewheeling hippie communes that preached to turn on, tune in, and drop out. It is in this very environment of free love and rainbow children that Manson would find his niche. While wandering from camp to camp and street corner to street corner, he began to develop a warped outlook and a diabolical underpinning of modern society as he saw it. Manson began to preach that the world was locked in a perpetual power struggle between the races and that soon an apocalyptic war would ensue between Caucasians and African Americans. Whether it was the various acid trips or his own delusional mind that fueled these beliefs, no one will ever know. Whatever it was, Manson began to see himself as an almost godlike being and was convinced that he and he alone would emerge as the world's savior following the impending race war. Soon the ex-convict began to attract followers to his insane pseudo-religion, and his recruits were specifically targeted as they fit a certain ritual template that Manson was looking for. Most of his followers were young, vulnerable women between the ages of 18 and 25. They were down on their luck, many of them runaways and seeking guidance, desperately searching for answers in their own lives. Among them were 21-year-old Susan Atkins, 20-year-old Linda Kasabian, 21-year-old Patricia Krenwinkel, and 19-year-old Leslie Van Houten. All were looking for someone to believe in, and when they met Charles Manson, they seemed to find him. Over the next 2 years, Manson set up a commune of his own and gradually began to indoctrinate his followers into believing that he was the incarnation of Christ returned. Manson also started to formulate a grand plan of sorts, which in his mind would lead him to ultimate power. As an avid listener of music, Manson's favorite artists were the renowned Beatles of British fame. When the band released their White album to much critical success, Manson had come to an epiphany. In a fever-induced madness, the crazed cult leader believed that the Beatles were speaking directly to him through the album, and in particular the song entitled Helter Skelter. In the song, Manson hallucinated that the Beatles were ordering him to trigger the prophesied race war that would lead Manson to becoming the anointed leader of humanity. In this, the delusional self-proclaimed Messiah concocted a psychotic scheme that he firmly maintained would initiate the end of days.
On the night of August 8, 1969, Manson assembled a hit squad consisting of one of Manson's lieutenants, a young man named Charlie Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Linda Kasabian, and Patricia Krenwinkel. This was the first phase in Manson's murderous plan to start Armageddon. The four were dispatched to the home of young Hollywood actress Sharon Tate. The home was chosen by Manson as a pseudo-revenge ploy against a man named Terence Melcher, who had rented the house some months prior. Manson had once attempted to secure a recording deal with Melcher, who was a producer at the time. However, Melcher declined to do business with Manson. It is believed that Manson was under the impression that Melcher was still living in the Beverly Hills bungalow, and that he was Manson's intended target. In any case, the four were ordered by Manson to destroy everything in that house. In what was described as a fit of unbridled brutality, the young actress, her unborn child, Jay Sebring, screenwriter W. Frykowski, and heiress Abigail Folger were all heinously butchered that night. The total number of stab wounds of the victims were rumoured to be in the hundreds. Afterward, the four perpetrators scrawled messages around the house in their victims' blood. Among the grisly writings was the word pig on the front door.
The very next night, Manson decided to enact the second phase of his grandiose plot of Helter Skelter. However, this time, there were 2 members added to the hit squad, as well as Manson himself. Among the added recruits was 19-year-old Leslie Van Houten. The targets this time around were middle-aged couple Lino and Rosemary LaBianca, who were wealthy executives who owned a string of supermarkets. It is believed that the LaBiancas weren't entirely chosen at random, as their house stood next door to a residence that Manson and his followers would occasionally attend parties. The cult leader broke into the couple's residence, shadowed by his followers, and awoke the sleeping pair at gunpoint. He ordered them bound and gagged, with pillowcases stuffed over their heads. It's at this point that Manson leaves the house with a departing order to execute the couple. While Manson sat calmly outside, Leno and his wife Rosemary were stabbed in excess of 30 times in total. As in the previous murders, the victim's blood was used to scrawl hideous messages around the home. The word war was carved into Leno LaBianca's chest. The messages included the phrases, "Rise," "Death to pigs," as well as "Helter Skelter." In the ensuing hours, the family had planned on yet a third series of murders. However, this was abandoned due to a mix-up of addresses. The Manson family then flees to their hideout, a defunct backlot known as the Span Ranch, once used by various production studios as the backdrop for a number of Western films. It is here that Manson's followers waited for the upcoming race war to begin.
A few weeks later, acting on a tip from an unrelated auto theft case, police arrest several family members, including Manson himself. Authorities were not aware of just who they had taken into custody and regarded the hippies as nothing more than accomplices in a car theft ring, as well as connections to other petty misdemeanors. The breakthrough came in the form of Susan Atkins, when she began to brag to cellmates about her involvement in the Tate LeBlanc murders. The inmates struck a deal with law enforcement, as they claimed to have information on the slayings in exchange for immunity involving their own offences. When a deal is struck, the inmates give up Susan Atkins to police. In a series of interrogations, the whole grisly confession comes to light and implicates Manson as the mastermind behind the murder spree.
On March 29, 1971, Charles Manson, Patricia Krenwinkel, Susan Atkins, Charlie Watson, Leslie Van Houten, and Linda Kasabian were all sentenced to death. However, the defendants' sentences were all eventually commuted to life under California law. Manson himself languished in prison for the next 46 years when in mid-November of 2017, at the age of 83, he finally dies from complications due to gastrointestinal bleeding. Manson left behind a legacy of senseless bloodshed, and to this day, Charles Mills Manson has become synonymous with cult tragedy, murder, madness, and for many has given a face to true, unflinching evil.